Okay. Now let's wrap up the demo series by going through the workflow, which will walk through all of the content that has been prepared and add the activity to the CRM, which will then give the team the next steps of what they need to do. So this is the renewal workflow in Zapier. And I just have it starting with a catch hook for testing purposes. But for this demonstration, I'll just go into each task because it helps let you see inputs and outputs. And I'll talk about some of the decisions along the way. Okay, so let's test the find deal, which is where this all starts. So this is an out-of-the-box HubSpot find deal event. And how this is configured is to search on the deal stage, which would be qualified to buy. You can see the text is all together here. Sometimes you have to find out how the API outputs these text values, since it may look different in the system. Now, because this is going to find multiple deals and enter into a loop, so it would essentially find maybe 5 or 10 at-risk deals and then loop through them and do work. To simplify things for this demo, I just put the name of the actual deal that I want to work with, and that's what these extra property names are. And then when we execute the test, it will fill up all of these values, which we can use to test subsequent steps. So you can see that it is the $7,500 deal, which equates to the Plus membership, and it is still in this qualified to buy stage. So then it enters into the loop, and if there were multiple deals, it would do this work for each deal. And then the next step is to find the associations. So as discussed in the data model, there are companies and contacts as what I would call the master data, if you will. And then transactions like deal, which are coming up over and over every time we have a potential sales event with the contact who is associated with the company. So in order to inspect all of the different variables for my deterministic algorithm, which is contacts that are not responsive or companies that have renewal coming up, I need to have all of that information. So this is the find associations method, and I can specify more than one, and I'm returning contact and company. And on this test, you will see that it returns the IDs for the contact and the company associated to that deal. So now I can get the details on that contact using the find contact event. And I'm just looking up by record ID, which is very clean. And now I have all of the contact information that I can use in future steps. And it's the same for company. And it doesn't matter what order I did these in, but I search by ID and I get back all of the company information. So this is pretty straightforward when you've gone through the prerequisite work of making sure your data model is clean and that you've thought through the pieces and parts of the workflow, the types of information you want to evaluate, when you're going to use deterministic filters, and how you're going to send variable content into a large language model. So let's keep moving. This filter step is going to be what helps me identify my at-risk deals, so to speak. So there may have been many deals in the qualified to buy stage, but I'm only concerned about those that are at risk, which are going to be expiring in the next 90 days. And I don't have a good engagement score with my contact. And they're stuck in an attempted to contact state, which means I've emailed them or called them and they're just not responding. So now, if there weren't any deals, or if the deal that I was working on at that point in the loop didn't match those conditions, then it would just move on to the next deal and keep going. So this can be run over and over again. So we know that we have at least one at-risk deal. And now what I want to do is obtain the information across the company and the contact in JSON format. So I just use a little JavaScript here to format that exactly how I want it. And we can look at the output here, and it's fairly straightforward. Okay. Then I'm going to search Pinecone, which we talked about in the last video, the power of the vector database. And it's a similar setup here in Zapier. Very straightforward. You just choose the app. We're using a search records event. And we have our API key, and we name our index and our namespace. And if I had other concepts in my retrieval augmented generation patterns, I might consider separating some of the content into different namespaces. For instance, when I build the chatbot, I may have my FAQ content in a separate namespace so it doesn't get mixed up with the playbooks. And I make a query here related to what's important for this at-risk scenario. There could be a case to generate this dynamically in other scenarios. But for this particular demo, it was fine to hard code it. And the top K will limit my results. And this is going to return that relevant information from content stack related to this context, which again, we talked about with RAG, provides like that semantic layer, which without this technology would be more difficult or impossible to replicate with the other platforms. So then after testing this, it returns the results, which we saw in the Pinecone view. And here's what it looks like when it lands in Zapier. And I can reference these result text fields in future steps. So I've got the playbook and I've got benefits related to that particular membership type and things of that nature. Okay, so now there's some additional JavaScript being run. And what this is going to do is clean up that JSON format into just plain text because it will be more friendly for the LLM, essentially. And here's how that looks. So this is a much cleaner format for the LLM than trying to get it to read and parse JSON, which can create issues. So this is some of the design patterns that come up when you're building workflow plus AI and thinking about where you're getting information from, how you're formatting it, and how you're sending it to AI to get a good response, and where there are opportunities for tuning or changing things if you're not getting the results that you want. Okay, now I had shown before briefly in the company profile, I was just borrowing the description field to put a news article as some extra context to just, again, increase the complexity of this demo and also provide contextual awareness in the responses being sent back. And, an example might be, let's say there's a membership renewal and a company is filing for bankruptcy. It might be strange to, push them for membership at this time. So these, again, are some of the things to think about, particularly in marketing, because the context of what's happening right now is so important, and it's difficult to keep up with just naturally because there's so many things changing in the world at any given time. But it's a pretty simple solution to build once you have the idea sketched out. And this is just another service called Appify. There's so many of these out here that you can leverage as part of an overall solution. And it does all the hard work already for me. It just scrapes the URL and returns the text. And it actually provides multiple formats with HTML, with Markdown, and then with nothing at all. So it's done all that parsing and cleaning up for me, which is great. And for the LLM, I prefer the Markdown version, which is what I'll use. And I'll just scroll to it briefly. So there it is. And, this is the whole article. Now, sending the entire article to AI is going to bloat the token window. So it would be best to summarize that before we get into the final AI step. And that's what this does here. So it's a fairly straightforward prompt. You're a sales enablement assistant, and you're going to read this article and provide a summary up to 1,000 characters. And then when I tested this, it came up with, the market's booming and growth drivers are AI and IoT and smart factories. And there's a challenge mentioned at the end of high initial investment in cybersecurity as key challenges. So if there's challenges here that relate to the benefits in our marketing taxonomy, this is a great scenario and use case for AI to put those pieces together and tell a story naturally and equip the team with that information. Again, and it's doing this work while the team is off doing other strategic things. So it can be super efficient. Okay, and then the next step puts it all together. So this prompt is a little longer. You're, again, a sales enablement assistant assisting the team. You're getting all of the context of the company. You're getting the news summary, and you're getting the sources from Pinecone. And then using the information above, it's going to write up why a task is getting created for the seller, a draft of the email they can use straight away, and make adjustments if they like, which satisfies our human in the loop approval. And then some coaching notes to, again, equip the seller in case there's a response or a real-time conversation to be ready with handling objections or other concerns. So this is the end of the demonstration. So let's look at what it came up with. So this task assists this industrial company's renewal, and essentially the deal has stalled. So we're giving context to the person using this information as to like why it was generated. Again, this is another key consideration when you're designing workflow plus AI of how the team is going to be kept in the loop and communicated to when AI is used, how it's used, why it's used, and explaining everything so that it's not just like a black box. And then it drafts the email. So, dear first name, hope this finds you well. All this sort of boilerplate content could be worked up in templates and automated, and brand tone and other techniques can all be incorporated. So all of these subjective and adjustable things that are unique to your brand can be accommodated, which again just highlights the power of Gen AI in this instance. So it's just got a natural opening here of, in your role, you're facing challenges, and here's how we can support you, and things of that nature. And the goal is to generate some engagement with this higher value message that's targeted specifically to what their organization may be facing at that point in time. And then at the end, just simple coaching notes. And some of this comes from the playbook in terms of focusing on risk mitigation and costs and things of that nature. Okay, so that is all the content generated, and then really the last step is to just push that into back into HubSpot, and all the fields are already there. So, and I could have created multiple tasks, perhaps draft an email task and leave it unsent, but I just put it all into one for now for this demo. And it's a not started task, and it's associated with the contact and the company and everything like that. So it's easy to find. So I'm just going to execute this again from the interface because I created one and I deleted it just to show for the demo that it can push this again. So now let's go back to HubSpot, and we'll go into our contact. So if I was somebody working with this contact, I might be in here reviewing activities as part of my daily work. And I can go to tasks, and this was assigned to me. I'm the only user in the system right now. And the information's in here as the same stuff that we already discussed, why this task exists, email copy that I can copy and paste and run with, and so on and so forth. And in a production scenario, I'll probably separate this out into different objects. And then, of course, have probably HubSpot's notifications, make sure that this was top of the work list for that person. All different types of ways to approach that. Okay, so that concludes the demo.